Fallacies are hard to see, and that is just fine with me. Modus ponens is the plan. Serve you logic, I am.
Deconverted man here. Imagine, if you will, a grandfather clock made of wood, metal, and a bit of glass for its face. Its gears polished to near perfection, its woodwork unmatched, a thing of beauty and awe. Such a clock is delivered to you to celebrate such a wonderful gift. You call your friend over. Look at it! It's a wonder, you say. I agree, your friend says. It's lovingly made just for me, designed so I can tell time. What a marvel! Whoever sent this to me must be a wise and loving and rich person to be able to do such a thing for me. Your friend tilts his head and places his hand on his chin and looks at you, pondering. How do you know any of that is true? He asks. What? You exclaim. Of course it's true! How else could I get such a clock? But your friend presses on. You don't know who delivered it. Thus, you cannot know the motives of them. Fine, but whoever's in charge of them, that person must be rich and kind and loving, you declare. Not so. Again, you cannot know anything about the person who hired the person, your friend says. Preposterous! You exclaim. Somewhere high up at the end of this chain must be the person who has the wealth, who is wise enough to make good choices about who designs his clocks and loves me. There must be such a person. Your friend shakes his head. Not at all. There might be a number of people who work on such clocks without any direct supervisor. It might be a team of people who own a number of stocks in a business. It might be robots doing the job. And for all you know, the clock might have been delivered to you by accident. Get out! You exclaim, and you throw your friend out. I'm that friend. A skeptic's job, in part, is to dismantle such emotional ideas, stories that we tell ourselves about objects and things to make them more than they are. The grandfather clock is an expensive clock, or at least it looks like one. Who knows what an expert eye might say about it? Perhaps it's a cheap knockoff. What about the idea of the person that made it, and who are they and what reasons they have? To just assume and assert things about that person is completely incoherent. You can't know anything about them. How do you know that it was made for you? The only thing that you could maybe say is that it's made to tell time. But do you know that it's keeping accurate time? Have you checked it? Have you calibrated it? Have you run it through any sort of test to determine whether or not it's actually keeping time right? Or is it a clock that's only right twice in a day? Questions have to be asked and addressed. Simply asserting that it's this way does us no good. We cannot know such things. But we assert things like this because of emotion, our need to make that grandfather clock more than it is. And this analogy plays into that of the universe itself. But unlike the grandfather clock, which we knew took a person to build it at some point, or to build the machine that built it, we don't know anything like that for the universe, but the theists and apologists insist that it must be designed. It must have been made for a purpose. Is that analogy true? Or is it an appeal to emotion? Is it the same fallacious thinking about the grandfather clock? Can we pull it back to a designer like the grandfather clock ultimately needs? Or is there no designer at all? Let's explore that in this video, Fine-Tuning Isn't So Fine.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere.
This hole fits me rather nice. Actually, it fits me perfectly. It must have been made just for me. So it was taken by surprise when it finally dried up. Douglas Adams summarizes the fine-tuning argument quite nicely with a puddle of water. Had that puddle of water found itself in a different hole, well then it wouldn't be able to be that puddle of water at all. But that's not really what this apologetic is asserting. What they're saying is, if anything was different, there'd be no water at all. There'd be no life to consider the idea that we're here. Did you note that although we were given all the numbers for the speed of light and so on and so forth, we weren't given a single scientist that agrees that this is true? It's stated that scientists agree with this, without one name mentioned.
Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely.
Well, touche, video. Touche. Although it's from a different video. So I'm using multiple videos in this video. So technically, my complaint was still right because whatever. Alright, so scientists have said this. At least when we cherry pick what they've said, they say this. So is that really what they're saying? Or is that just a quote? See, a moment ago, Deconverted Man, you were complaining that they didn't list the scientists. Now you're complaining that they didn't say the whole thing that the scientists said? Yeah! Because it's kind of important. This one little teeny quote, where did it come from? When did they say it? In what book? During what lecture? In what peer-reviewed publication has that statement been uttered? That matters. People take Darwin out of context all the time for apologetics. There's a little bit on, how wondrous the eye is and what a marvel it is, and it's so amazing. And then he follows it up with, but that's just how it is. It evolved, even though that surprises us. They take out the last bit because it's inconvenient for their argument. So saying what scientists agree with this would be great, but showing that the context in which the scientists agreed with you is aligned with your idea is even better and makes a far stronger case. Now, yeah, the video would be longer, but some of these videos are an hour plus long anyways, filled with the numbers and tuning and showing a radio dial so that you get this idea in your head of dials. Well, who can move dials? I can move dials. A person can move dials. It's already getting you to imagine a person messing about with the dials of the universe. It's already putting into your head a story that it wants you to think is true. And yes, it is valid to criticize when they don't mention what scientists agree with this position. It's also valid to criticize when they do mention the scientists and only include one quote, and don't show the association causation between the two, don't show that that's the full thing that they were talking about, and ultimately do not show if any of this actually matters. What I mean for that is, so what if something was different? Well, then life wouldn't be possible. But is that really true? Is that really what the scientists have said? What model is used? And are they talking about during the formation of the universe? During the big expansion, that if we had something different back then, that then life would not be possible? Or are we talking about now, the way the universe is now? If something was different, life wouldn't be possible. Which is it? I don't know. It's not said. So that's a problem with this. One of many problems. And ultimately, I have to ponder, even if it was absolutely true that this is the only universe that could support life, why does that mean that it had to be created? What link from this is the only universe that can have life to any sort of creator is there? Other than, well, that's the best explanation. We've heard that statement before. What is the better explanation? What's the best explanation? We don't even know if there's an explanation. We can't begin to guess what that could be, but we do guess because we like to fit everything together. We want to understand things in a coherent manner. And we can't do that. We have a mystery. We have an unknown. What would be truly remarkable, from my point of view, would be to find ourselves in a universe that could not permit life, and yet we were here despite that fact. That would be a lot harder to explain. That would give me great pause. But that's not the sort of universe we find ourselves in. It's not surprising to find ourselves in a universe that allows for life, because we could not find ourselves in any sort of universe that didn't. But isn't universe all that there is? Isn't universe the total sum of reality? Well, let's find out.
A few months ago, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to two teams of astronomers for a discovery that has been hailed as one of the most important astronomical observations ever. And today, after briefly describing what they found, I'm going to tell you about a highly controversial framework for explaining their discovery, namely the possibility that way beyond the Earth, the Milky Way, and other distant galaxies, we may find that our universe is not the only universe, but is instead part of a vast complex of universes that we call the multiverse. Now, the idea of a multiverse is a strange one. I mean, most of us were raised to believe that the word universe means everything. And I say most of us with forethought, as my 4-year-old daughter has heard me speak of these ideas since she was born. And last year, I was holding her and I said, "Sophia, I love you more than anything in the universe." And she turned to me and said, "Daddy, universe or multiverse?"
Well, there you have it. My one scientist that says that there's a multiverse. I guess I win, drop the microphone, walk off the stage. Well, that would work if I was doing apologetics, but I'm not. I'm trying to address the argument made by apologetics that asserts if it wasn't this way, we wouldn't have life. Really? But that's really not what scientists are really saying. Well, but if you cherry pick them, then it is. But if this creator is all-powerful, as many assert, why is there only one universe that can support life? Why does it have to be set this way? And why did it take so long to get to the point where life was permitted? And within the first few moments of the universe, life wasn't possible at all during that time. It took a long time for life to be possible. There's plenty of objections to the argument of fine-tuning. Did Someone Set the Dial from Atheism Explained by David Ramsey Steele has a number of objections. We don't know that the universe is improbable. Improbable conditions may be independent. The argument assumes existing laws. There may be many universes. There may be a natural selection of universes. And dial setting does not imply God, which is my objection.
To some of us, not all, to some of us, it looks like we have to live with the idea that the constants of nature, the laws of nature, everything that we know about, somehow was influenced by our own existence. This is something which physicists hate the idea of. Most physicists want the world to be controlled by pure mathematics, not by our own existence.
Really? Those other physicists want it to be all mathematics? They desire that? They have an emotional attachment that that must be the answer? Or is that the conclusion that they've drawn, despite whatever emotions they might have? It's also interesting that he says that that life, somehow makes it different. How? That's backwards, isn't it? Because we weren't here at the beginning of the universe, right? Like, life wasn't here back then. Doesn't it assume that the universe is being set up so that life can be here at all? On this one speck of dirt in a vast, ginormous universe filled with other specks of dirt floating around, balls of energy, that all of that had to be in place for you and I. What egotistical assumption. He might be a physicist, don't know how qualified he is in that regard, but he certainly doesn't understand logic, because the number of assumptions and question begging required to get to the point that he presented here, well, it's over 9,000. It's not really that many fallacies. I'm just, if the fallacies were different, then we wouldn't have lobsters. Moving on.
Some of those stars explode, providing raw material with which to form new stars, planets, and ultimately life. Had the laws of physics been a little bit different, or even if the physical constants had been a little bit different from what they really are, this process of nuclear fusion and the explosion of stars might not have been possible, and we wouldn't be here discussing it.
Consider the arguments against evolution. It's so improbable that it could have been this way. It's so impossible that we are the result of this long chain of processes. By chance, it's impossible. But we don't say it's by chance, but that's what apologists like to say that we say. It's just insurmountable. You don't know how it all started. It doesn't make sense for life to not come from non-life. It doesn't. How do you explain it? You can't. It's got to be a creator. It had to be that. It couldn't be just natural. It couldn't just have occurred on its own. Why not? Why couldn't it? Because it's so improbable. The fine-tuning of the universe is so improbable to have happened this way that it has to be a creator. Setting aside all that we can hope to understand about space and time, general relative theories, quantum physics, whatever, set aside all the science. Put it on the shelf, far out of reach. Because we have declared that it must be a creator? Which one? Well, there's other arguments. We'll get to those. But now that you've accepted that it has to be a creator, now we can start the the explanations, not brainwashing. The explanations that will lead you to the God of Eth. The God of what, you said? Yeah, that's right. The God of Eth. What the bleep is the God of Eth? Well, it's ETH. Can't possibly hope to pronounce this. But it is a God that is all evil. It is the God of Eth, where they sincerely believe in this planet that a God exists and it is all powerful and all evil. And sure, there's some good, but those good had to be required for there to be evil. That if we didn't see good, we wouldn't know what evil was, and so on and so forth. The God of Eth disassembles the idea that it must be a certain type of God. But no matter, the creationist has won. They have gotten us to a point of no return. We have to believe in a creator of some sort. Maybe it's an evil one, maybe it's a good one, maybe it's a little bit of both. But we have put science on the shelf. We have given up looking because it can't be anything else. It's not good enough. Many of you that I reached out to with ideas about fine-tuning gave me wonderful things to think about and consider. The Socratic questions in response to these statements made by apologetics crumbles them to bits and pieces. Even if we were to grant 100% that the universe is finely tuned for life, and that if anything was different there wouldn't be life, that still can't get us to therefore it must be a creator. Fine-tuning? It's not that fine. As I said, I'd be really surprised if we were in a universe that didn't allow for life. And speaking of that, most of the universe doesn't allow for life anyways. Why have that sort of universe? Why not just have it like you could like walk and the universe would be endlessly explorable, that it would all just be a stretched out land mass, that's what the universe would be like, that it'd be full of air, and or why even need air? Why couldn't we exist in space and just float around in space, and you'd have the same sort of universe, but you'd have us being able to float around and see all the different planets? Then what would we say? Well, it's wonderful that the creator made it so that we would be able to float through space and see all these cool planets. Different types of life would see it in a different way, would argue for different creators. But is there a creator? Unlike the clock, we don't have an answer. See, we've discovered that if you have a process where you have either life or not life, that the non-life dies, the life continues. Well, if you have a process of non-universe and universe, then universe continues. And if the universe happens to allow for life, then it does. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. Who's to say ours is the first one, or the last one, or the only one? Who could know? Well, maybe the creator would. But unfortunately, they're apparently so quiet that it's almost like they don't exist at all. It certainly was a wonderful gift that you got that day when you received the grandfather clock. although it might have not been a gift at all, and you might owe someone a large sum of money, or any number of possibilities we simply do not know. But it was made by somebody, which is more than we can say about the universe. Until we have a logically coherent argument, we should stay skeptical of the conclusions.
When certain deep truths about the cosmos are still within reach of the human spirit of exploration, it appears that it may not always be that way. Because today's astronomers, by turning powerful telescopes to the sky, have captured a handful of starkly informative photons, a kind of cosmic telegram, billions of years in transit. And the message, echoing across the ages, is clear. Sometimes nature guards her secrets with the unbreakable grip of physical law. Sometimes the true nature of reality beckons from just beyond the horizon. Thank you very much.
Brian, thank you.
Would you like your name to show up at the end of some of my videos, but not at the end of other ones? Well, be like Jacob Santos, Luis Castro, Goodless Geezer, and Joshi Schmidt, and get your name probably mispronounced by me at the end of a video by becoming one of my pleasing Patreon peoples. Just go to Patreon/TheConvertedMan. Link is in the description box below somewhere. Click on that. Click on me. Send me money, please, because I need to pay bills. And if I can't pay bills, then I can't make videos. And if I can't make videos, then what's the point, really? What's the point? So anyways, here's some music. And talk to you later. Or, well, I'll make a video later. And then I'll post it. And you'll talk, or you'll type in the comments.
That is just fine with me. Modus ponens is the plan. Serve your logic.